One of the things that we've never talked about is fertilizer and fertilizing, which is important to feed your plants. Now, our soils are really good. We put a lot of really good stuff into the soils when you started, but the plants are using it. And just like us, we need to be fed, so do it. So, without further ado, I'm going to let you do that.
Okay.
We have some other things to talk about once she's finished.
Thanks for having me out. I felt like when I was first gardening, and I always sprung for the expensive soil and had like all the really great compost and stuff in my garden, but someone said, "Oh, you have to fertilize." And I was like, "Oh, but I have all this great soil, And then I did some more research and then discovered that, we do need some extra fertilizer. And it's sort of like thinking about your own diet. You can eat well, you can exercise, you do good, but you still need to make sure you have a balanced nutrition to have a good immune system, to fight off disease. Make sure that you're, especially when you're supposed to be growing. As adults, we're not necessarily supposed to grow too much more, but make sure kids have a balanced nutrition, that they're growing big and strong. And then when you're older too, to make sure you have strong, healthy bones. And so even with their plants, at different stages of their growth, they have different needs, just like people, and we want to make sure that they have a good foundation in the soil, but they do need extra nutrients and minerals and things to make sure they're healthy and strong. So like, let's say, for example, the pepper plants, I see a lot of peppers. So when they're supposed to put on their fruits, that they have all the nutrition they need to put lots of flowers out and to grow those fruits, those peppers and cell walls. So first I want to talk about a little bit about how plants grow and how they get their nutrients. And so plants don't actually, they can't, the only way they get things taken up is it has to be diluted in the water itself. So that's why watering is so important, is only when it has water, that's when the roots are able to suck up things through their roots and then photosynthesize and turn that into new growth. And so the nutrients themselves in your soil have to be able to be water soluble. So this, I stole some good looking soil from someone's bed. And so you can see, like, this is great. So, and I didn't let this settle too long. But you can see how dark and rich the water is. And so the soil's kind of settling. And so this is really nutrient dense soil, because I can see all this great black like stuff suspended in the dirt. If we were to take sort of the native soil and, put a cup of it in dirt, shake it up for a while, over time the liquid would be like almost clear. There wouldn't be anything dissolved or suspended in the liquid. It doesn't have, our native soils don't really have a lot of nutrients in them. And so so this is probably compost, probably maybe manure in that bed, things too. And so all of that is really decomposed organic matter and suspended in the solution. And so those roots are able to actually suck it up and grow. And so sometimes if you purchase compost more than the compost you make here on site, is going to be very chunky and like woody. It almost seems like more like wood chips than necessarily good compost. And so a lot of that, if we were to do the same experiment, wouldn't have really dark, rich liquid. It's not broken down enough. It needs to be really broken down so that those nutrients can separate from the soil particles and actually be sucked up by the plants. And so that's a danger when you, in Phoenix too, a lot of the compost we have available to buy for purchase isn't really ready. It's not ready for your garden, for your plants. And so that's why, especially people who build a new garden bed, get all these soil and put in there, it can take almost like a year before that soil actually is good, and because it takes so long for it to break down. And so it's much better like have your own home compost system, or the compost systems like we have here, because you can monitor it and actually make sure that it's really broken down to be available for the plants. And so sometimes if it's too chunky, it takes months for that to become actual nutrients for your plants. And then too, like what the soil's made from has different nutrients in it. So homemade compost often is from your veggie scraps and the leftover ends of your zucchini and rotten tomatoes or whatever have in your fridge. So it is very food based, and so it's got a lot of different nutrients in it, as food does. It sucks out different nutrients from the soil. But a lot of more commercially made compost is tree based. It's tree clippings. It's palm fronds and other stuff. It's all the landscape waste. And so that isn't very diverse in the types of nutrients it has, and so it's not as high quality for your plants to suck it up. So I have a bunch of examples of different fertilizer, and so but starting with good soil is going to be your foundation and your base for things. And so that's why, using the worm castings, the manure, just really great homemade compost. And then two, watering your beds. So I don't know how many people took a break over the summer. But when we take away water from that equation, a lot of the great stuff in the soil ends up dying. And so then you almost have to restart building that soil again. So if I can back up a sec, your soil is alive. There's millions of little microorganisms in that soil that's eating all that organic matter, chomping away at it, and then it's breaking it down more so that it can be liquid solution and sucked up by your plants. And so if you were to take away the moisture or give it too much heat, which is hard to control, especially here, all those little microorganisms die off, and so it's not as alive. And if there's worms in your bed too, they don't like the heat and they don't like it too dry. And so all those things that are breaking stuff down sort of are no longer in there. So I highly encourage you over the summer too to make sure that the beds stay moist and the soil stays alive too. So you almost have to restart. And so if just as every season you're adding more organic matter, what you're really doing is adding food for all those microorganisms to eat. And so they're the ones that are breaking down. You probably notice if you have your garden bed and then you planted the season and then the soil level goes away and it's like, where did it go? And so you have to refill that. But where it went is all food for these microorganisms, and then it became solution for all the plants to take up. And so all that plant matter you see on top came from your soil. So that's where it went. It went into your plants. And so that's why it's not just that the soil compacted, it's just that literally the plants ate it. And so there's nothing still there. Hi, Alex. And so that's why we have to replenish that volume. But also we want to replenish it with lots of food for all those microorganisms to break down. And so if you have a good foundation, good soil, over time you actually need less and less fertilizer. You don't need to fertilize a lot. But particularly if you're sort of adding and building a new bed, a new area, a new season, adding fertilizer is going to just help that overall growth. And so one thing I like to do, and you can see this on some of them, is you can get some fertilizers or products that actually have all those microorganisms. This one has mycorrhiza. There are these microscopic organisms those are what eating all that compost and eating that stuff to make it available for your plants. And so by adding in fertilizers that have mycorrhiza, you can sort of build that little micro community that's feeding your plant. So some fertilizers have that in it. You can just buy mycorrhiza inoculant too, which can be expensive or just more difficult to find. But a lot of good organic fertilizers now have it in there. Also the worm castings. I know you have your worm bins here too. That's what the worms are doing is sort of through their guts as they're eating the food scraps, they're adding mycorrhiza and microbacteria to break down the soil too. So that's why worm castings are so great to add to your soil as well, because not only is it's passed through the digestive system, so it's more broken down and available, but it's also adding more microorganisms to just further that cycle and process too. So beginning of every season I add fertilizer, and then depending on how things are looking, not so much in the winter, this is our great time to grow, right? Things aren't as stressed out, but at different points of the year, if things are looking a little stressed or worried, it could be, are you watering enough? But it also could be, maybe you don't have enough nutrients in there. And so you can fertilize throughout the season too. but it's much easier when you have a clear bed or clear space to add that fertilizer in. So I did want to break down not all fertilizers are the same. That's why I have like 15 different things here to kind of talk about. But because plants actually take about 40 different nutrients in their construction and how they grow. But basically there are 3 main ones that they use. And most fertilizers only have those 3, but some have more. Like this one has calcium and sulfur. Does anyone know what the main 3 nutrients are? Yeah.
Nitrogen, is it phosphorus?
Mm-hmm. Right. So nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium are the main 3. And so they're known as NPK. And so all fertilizers have a number on them, or 3 numbers and dashes between. So I'm going to pass this one around. So then you can kind of read too. So on a fertilizer bag, we'll have a couple things. Always have the number. And so that means nitrogen, how many parts nitrogen, how many parts potassium, or phosphorus, and how many parts potassium, NPK. And then we'll have other things about what made up that fertilizer. And so you can kind of read the different stuff that makes it up. And the third thing it always will have is how do you use it? We don't just dump this entire bag onto it. Each fertilizer has its own application rate. And so you want to abide by that, roughly. So you're not adding too much, because you can definitely over-fertilize, right? And so that will actually damage your plants or damage your growth. So I'll pass a couple of these around. You can kind of see, and what I want you to do is read what things are made from. And they all have those 3 numbers on them. I mean, okay, you're going to help me out, Terry. Thanks. And so... and then sometimes they have other stuff. And in general, nitrogen helps with all the green leafy growth. Nitrogen helps that stuff like you see above ground. So if your plants are looking a little like maybe yellow or just like they're not really growing much on top, they need an influx of nitrogen to get more growth on the top.
That's a good question.
How much is one of those bags?
Like, so that's why I wanted to bring a couple different products and things. So that's True Organics. That whole bag is probably, I think it's about $12. And that's all organic made. So we'll talk about what does it mean organic versus synthetic. And then the other one that she just had is a different product that has some more different ingredients and more premium. That's $45 a bag. And so the volume's the same, but you have to look at how much you actually use too.
I was wondering, could you add some of that into your compost and mix it to help the compost?
Some yes, yeah. So if your compost, that's a kind of a whole nother issue. Like if your compost is sort of nitrogen poor, you can add in a high nitrogen fertilizer, which would be like this blood meal here, and sort of kickstart that too. Because sometimes we have a lot of browns in the compost, but we don't have a lot of greens that are adding more nitrogen, and so you can mix to the balance. But I this is more ready to go right into the planting area.
I've been experimenting with my compost.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of different things to get that.
Some Epsom salt, and get it into the compost.
Yeah.
Give it a boost.
You could, yeah. I mean, it all like contributes somewhere. So Epsom salts is not a NPK nutrient; it's a calcium, is what, and some magnesium too. And those are part of all these 40 nutrients that plants need. And so, but it's not one of the main ones. But those other ones are important too. You just don't add them like is much volume. So nitrogen is all the sort of leafy green growth, right? I forgot. I guess we have one I was going to show. The blood meal one, the yellow bag. If you look at the first number on that is 10 or 12, and then it's 00. So that means it's 12 parts nitrogen, and then it has no phosphorus and potassium in that. And it is like, so it's very high nitrogen. So what kind of things do you want lots of leafy green growth? All those birds are like, oh, it's a, what was that? Oh, crazy. A hawk was after something. And like, so what kind of crops are you growing or veggies are you growing? You want lots of green growth, lots of leafy green. Yeah, like all the leafy greens. You want all the, so for winter stuff, fall stuff you're doing now, like the Swiss chard, the spinach, the lettuce, the kales and things that you want, like lots of leafy green, having a really high nitrogen fertilizer is really important too. And so that one, that's what blood meal is very high nitrogen. And it is what it sounds like. It's derived from livestock byproducts. It is blood meal. And so it's been granulized. So you can open these up too if you want to see what anything looks like. Give it a whiff. No, it actually like doesn't really smell too, but that's what it is. And so it's sort of, it's not, and then the alternate is bone meal, which is very high in phosphorus, and that is made from what you think it is, made from bones too. And so these are byproducts of livestock slaughterhouses, and so it's not a vegan product. And so that's what, if those decisions are important to you, is sort of looking at the actual ingredients of things and is it derived from what is it made from, things too. Other people, have big gardens, talk about other wildlife and stuff being attracted to those things. Yeah, I don't know if a cat would really be into it. Bone meal? Okay, so yeah. So I don't have pets, so I've never encountered that things. But yeah, so you just have the cats everywhere. Yeah. Can I see this one? I was gonna see. So this is also a true organic product. This is a liquid one. Sorry if I'm getting off topic. I just forgot to say this. And then this you feel is like little grains. It's called a granular. So most of what I passed around would be called a granular, and this is a liquid fertilizer. It's similar. So this one's a 3-2-3, 5-4-5. They're roughly similar things. And so which one do you think the plants take up better? The liquid. So that's what, if you want more immediate results, an immediate boost, a liquid-based fertilizer is going to give you that faster than the granular. It's going to take a good 10 days, 2 weeks before this starts to dissolve in your soil and really get able to suck up by your plants. So with new planting, like new garden bed prep, I like the granular, because then it slowly breaks down over the next few weeks. Where, immediately transplanting plants or giving something's looking a little sad, going with a liquid fertilizer is going to be more immediate, sucked up by the plants. Yeah, so that's what, always too, following the instructions. These are all organic products except for the Miracle Grow one. And so they're not chemical based, and so it's really hard to burn your plants and cause damage from over fertilizing, but you can. So that's why following the thing. So this isn't, this doesn't look like much, but you dilute it 2 ounces per gallon of water. So it's not much, and so 2 ounces is a shot glass kind of thing. So it's not much. And so this too, when you're talking about pricing, this is probably $10, I would say. Most liquid ones are as well. So okay, so that we covered. N is great for all your leafy greens and growth. And then, okay, so this is your quiz and review. What does P stand for? The second number, phosphorus. So phosphorus is good for the roots as well as the blooms, the flowers. And so, peppers, tomatoes, you want lots of flowers. But you don't want lots of flowers when they're first growing in tiny little plants. You want to give them a phosphorus boost when they're bigger plants. And then roots. So what would high phosphorus fertilizer be great for? Carrots, all those root crops. Carrots, beets, parsnips, radishes, turnips, right, Dan? Turnips. And so on those, you don't necessarily want a lot of leafy green growth on top. Because what happens with the carrot, if you give it too high of nitrogen-based fertilizer, if we gave that the blood meal, it would grow beautiful big tops, and the carrot itself would be very hairy and kind of gross. It wouldn't be a nice slim carrot, and so it would love something that's higher in the middle number, and that would be bone meal is like 0, 10, 0 on that. And so and then the last number, K, remember what that one is? Potassium. And so potassium is kind of more of the overall growth. It promotes really great root development. And so we talked about this before. More roots means more nutrient uptake, and just more that zone that the plants can suck up nutrients for really good stem growth, really strong cells, and so kind of overall health. And so there isn't a lot of fertilizers that have a really high third number. Usually it's just kind of tacked on things for that. So, not to be confusing or make it more complicated, a lot of fertilizers, all three numbers are generally about the same. Those are kind of balanced, what's called a balanced fertilizer. And that's kind of your go-to, is to get something balanced. And so this one's called all-purpose. Usually a lot of the all-purpose ones are the same, 5-5-5, or maybe there's a little variation in the concentration, but kind of general all-around good choice. No, well, and so that's what different things where you just kind of soak banana peels or soak aloe vera or stuff too, is often those are adding other micronutrients as well, and other boosts. And that's what too, if your compost is made heavily of bananas, you're going to have a lot more potassium, right? Because that's why we eat bananas, is to get potassium. And so those are going to be higher in that. And so in general, like, you don't need to worry about the specific concentration per se, but maybe you would, the only one I really worry about is like giving too much nitrogen to crops that you want the root growth on, and too, because then you're kind of throwing off the plant's like anatomy by giving it top growth and not the root growth. The other thing is, like, if you may have noticed, what was some of the ingredients on some of these things? Did you read the derived from? So just like in the soil, this one has a lot of poultry manure, chicken manure. The best tomatoes I ever grew in my whole life was the area that Dan and Terry dumped wet, rotting chicken manure from the coop that got flooded. Remember that year it rained constantly, and so the coop is always flooded, so it's really high chicken manure. It sat there for a couple months before spraying and planted tomatoes. Best tomatoes, fastest growth. Chicken manure is amazing. So that's really high nitrogen things too. Some other stuff, seabird guano, sort of seagull poop. That's what seabird guano is. Fish bone meal, crab shells, shrimp shells. What are some other ones? This one has bat guano, so taken from different caves, where bat poo is accumulated. Kelp meal, sort of kelp from the ocean. That's what this one is, only kelp meal too. So it's got pretty low numbers, but just the kelp and a lot of ocean products like that are really great for overall health of the plants too. And so this has a lot of phosphorus in kelp meal, and so I like doing kelp meal in compost tea, or just diluting some in water and things. So it sort of makes stronger, healthier plants. Some other good stuff. Neem seed. Neem is a tree that's got a lot of nutrients in it. I already mentioned about the blood meal and bone meal. So a lot of things are animal byproducts, and just another way to sort of make those things work. And yeah, so you can kind of look, and there is a growing trend in sort of the organic gardening world to have more veganic gardening. Lorna, yeah, veganic gardening, and not to derive in a lot of animal-based byproducts, and sort of ties into, are you providing slaughterhouses another income stream, or making it more sustainable, like by not going into a landfill, for example. So
2 buckets on my porch, one for bananas and one for cucumbers. What I do is just throw the fillings in each one of the buckets and let them soak in water.
Yeah, and then you can use that water. That water. So it's basically making and sloughing off all those nutrients into the water solution. So those banana peels especially are going to be more higher potassium too. I mean, the other thing you could do is compost all of it too, and so then it's in the compost as well. Yeah. That's probably not too long, because then yeah, exactly. Yeah, and nor would you necessarily want to, because then eventually you're kind of fermenting things, and there's a whole trend too with fermented fertilizers, and especially in Asia, of fermenting food scraps, and so that ferment sort of adds a lot of micronutrients and makes it more readily available. But I feel like that following like instructions of how to actually do that, so then one, you're not getting like a maggot infestation, and like, or if you're doing that in your garage or something, then you're not getting like flies and things too. And so you can kind of tell, the times the fertilizers may be off balance, you get more flies and critters, and that's what they do. They're just like attracted to rotting stuff. So yeah. I did want to point out a few other like different unusual things, or we can talk. Oh, we brought the big guy. Well, this is to acidify the soil, but Miracle Grow is very common, and I didn't actually see on here. So this one's a 12-4-8. Okay, so a lot of nitrogen, and a lot of things. But this is, what's it derived from? It doesn't actually tell you. Usually you can't read the words anyway. Oh, derived from potassium chloride, potassium phosphate, manganese, zinc, and then I don't know what EDTA means, but usually if it's a bigger label, it's a whole bunch of really like chemical sounding words, and it's sort of like, when they tell you if you can't pronounce the ingredients of your food, maybe you shouldn't be eating it. And so a lot of Miracle Grow and some other what is considered non-organic, like little o organic, is chemical-based fertilizer. And so this is more like steroids on things for your plants, and so they're not a naturally occurring thing like chicken manure or bat poo and oyster shells and things that are more made from organic, or meaning naturally based things. More chemical. This is getting weird out here. See it? What time is it?
It's getting cold out here.
Yeah, they said 9:32 was the height. You feel it? The birds have stopped.
Do you notice it?
Oh, yeah.
Kind of dark out?
Yeah.
The birds stop? Yeah. This is it. It's weird with the noise, yeah.
And this is the solar? So the moon
Yes.
in between?
The moon is, and then we could look at the sun. Well, I'll finish up. So I don't generally, I don't generally recommend the more synthetic based things. So these are made in a factory, where a lot of the other things are just natural things that are sort of decomposing and breaking down. It's sort of like steroids. And so what happens when you go off steroids? And the body, doesn't stuff. And so it's sort of like if you're able to feed them constantly, these sort of work, but more chemical-based ones I tend to shy away for it, because then it too isn't feeding the soil over time, and your soil isn't necessarily improving and adding those microorganisms in it. And too much salt in your soil too just doesn't help with the root uptake of things and to grow particularly well, and so it can build up a lot. Is that what your alarm was for? And so some other things, I had a new trending thing is to use sheep wool pellets. That's what these are. I haven't actually opened this one. You could look at some. So it's taking the wool that is sheared from sheep and then pelletizing it to make little pellets. And these are very high nitrogen and slow. Oh man, that is ripe. Don't sniff that. Especially I just open it. But so very high nitrogen, but it slowly feeds the soil. So this is a long-term addition. And so it's fun too, because then it's using all this sheep wool that wouldn't otherwise, and goat wool that otherwise wouldn't be used. So you can take a peek at that. And so following the application rates too, and just add it into the soil, and so it's going to slowly break down. The local woman, not this company, there's a local woman out east of town who has one of these pelletizer machines, and she's been making.
How much
I don't know. That's probably more expensive. That's probably $15 bag. This, we all know our worm castings. If you've been around here and play with the worm bins, it's really nice stuff. This is actually soldier fly poo. So this is another thing. Soldier flies feed on rotten stuff, and then their poo is called frass in insects. Is a really great nutrient too. And so this I picked up, and this is great if you're first starting seeds in little trays too, to get them nice strong growth. This is a $5 bag of insect frass, and so kind of fun. So you can kind of take a peek at what that is. I feel like there's a lot of new stuff and interest in sort of these other byproducts and how to use them to feed your soil. Other things, but eggshells, that's what oyster shells and some other things have very high calcium. But it's really important that those are decomposed to be available. Yes, and so the more they can be ground up, and then they're just decomposing, and that's what Epsom salts can be liquefied and is more readily available. Yeah, and so calcium's a really important one, and that's why some of these listed out, they had added calcium to them, and so, but that's really good for really strong plants and really thick stems and good overall plants. The other thing I would mention is you can, even with, especially with the synthetic type stuff, you can burn your plants. And so when it's really hot out too, the plants are sucking up lots of water, right? To like, you know, cool off and like just grow. They're sucking up lots of water. And so if you have too much fertilizer in, it's sucking up too fast. And so then it actually burns the leaves. And what that means is it sort of gets crispy and crunchy and more yellow and sort of kills off the leaves. And so particularly when it's super hot, you don't want to fertilize a lot just because it's sucking up so much. And particularly with, if you're not using, this is, you dilute this and not following the instructions or doing too much, you can cause more damage than good to those plants. And so I always want to look at what the actual instructions say. But the more natural based products aren't doing that as much. It's more like liquid based things, and synthetics can you do too much. And then it's sort of like vitamins. If your soil doesn't need it, and just if your body doesn't need the vitamins, it's just flushing away and not really to use. So you know, kind of understanding what your plants need too is making better use and not wasting your money with things. So I think I talked about other pricing or sources. You can get a lot of these things you can find locally at any nursery or Ace Hardware and Home Depot and things, but some of the brands are sort of more specialty things. This one's becoming more and more prevalent, this True Organics brand. There's Arizona Best Fertilizers, another good one.
They've been around a long time.
Yeah, they've been around a long time. That's synthetic based fertilizer, but they've been around a long time. So that's pretty inexpensive. You can get a pretty big bag for $10 there.
Normally like for lawns?
They do lawns, they do citrus blends. And so that's what a lot of these, I didn't bring any, like we'll say like for, or maybe this one even said, like for tomato and vegetable food, it just is for growing anything. Like it's for stuff. Or there's special citrus blends and stuff. And so some of that's more like to promote the flowering. And so it's the second number, the P number is higher and stuff. And so but most of all, you just want to look for something that's relatively the same numbers, unless you really want to go with leafy green and root crops, and then going with blood meal for the leafy greens or bone meal for the carrots and the roots.
What about that fish emulsion?
Yeah, so I don't know if you had one of those, but that's usually it's a very high N and very low PK, if I'm remembering right. Yeah, we can go get it. So it's nice because especially when you do transplants, fish emulsion is great. It gives everything a boost to kind of get some more leafy green, or if you're seeing lots of yellowing in plants, to do the fish emulsion. A lot of people do fish emulsion all the time. I don't think that's necessary. It's more of when you're transplanting or things are looking really yellow and and it's liquid, so it gives a quick boost. But I wouldn't do it all the time. These kinds of fertilizers we've been talking about, you apply to the soil itself and not necessarily wanting to spray all over. So it's Oh, it's high nitrogen. It does have some phosphorus and potassium, but it's more nitrogen growth. So I wouldn't do a lot of this on your root crops and things at all, and it's more when transplanting stuff. Gives it a nice little vitamin boost too. And then if you apply fertilizer directly to the leaves, that's called a foliar application. You're applying to the foliage, the foliar application, and that can really help, especially in summer, strengthen the leaves of the plants, make them a little thicker, and especially on trees and things, make them more resilient to the 115 plus degree temperature. Too. And so you only would want to do that with a very diluted solution that's made from natural organic materials like worm castings, insect frass, bat guano. Those kinds of things can be diluted and made into a tea. And so when we talk about compost tea, which I don't know if you've made around here lately, is usually taking the compost, some worm castings, and steeping it in water like you would tea, steeping it in water, usually adding some sugar of some sort. And so that helps the microbes that are naturally in there sort of breed and make more microbes. And that's what you want, is lots of microbes eating away and making all that good stuff available. And so it kind of breaks it down. And you can add, when I make my tea, I add a scoop of this stuff and some of the kelp meal. It just, and then you dilute it. So you add, maybe a cup to a gallon watering can. You can spray that all over, or spread that all over, and it's just a really good boost. And it has lots of microbes. So then over time, it's sort of feeding your plants stuff too. And usually microbes need air as well. So if you just had a bucket of water and things steeping in the water, there's no air. It's sort of anaerobic. And so that can actually kill all the good stuff because it needs air. So a lot of people do is a little aquarium pump filter, sort of pump in some air so that it doesn't kill the microbes. You actually want to breed more microbes. And so that's where we talked about just steeping the banana peels or other things in water. And if you do that too long, like you're creating this like anaerobic fermented thing, and so then it's killing off stuff.
You can do like aerobic fermentation.
Yes, that's true.
That's what
Yeah.
the bubbling is.
Yeah.
Is like to have air in. So like you're still fermenting it both ways.
That's true, I guess. Yeah, but you can. I gotcha.
But
that makes sense.
But the anaerobic is gonna be like you have to just dilute it way, way, way more. If
Yes.
you're like doing like what's the one with the K that?
Oh yeah, it's
Kobashi.
Yeah, Kobashi.
Yeah.
Kobashi.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and that's what too with the worm bins. If you have that like liquid leachate, the liquid stuff, you can apply that to your plants, but that's anaerobic and very concentrated. So that's diluting that quite a bit, so it's not burning stuff, and that could be really good stuff, just in limited quantities on any one plant. You just made me think of something else. What else kills things in water? Like chlorine. Yeah. So city water has a lot of chlorine, right, to make it healthy and drinkable. And so if we're making compost tea, or you're even watering your garden with city water, it's got a lot of chlorine, and that kills the soil microbes too. And so a lot of people here, you're using the irrigation water that is not treated, so that's why you can't drink it, right? And so it also is full of microbes already and just doesn't have the chlorine that's killing things off. And so a lot of, if you're gardening at home, you can have like a different filter that filters out the chlorine. I don't really think about it too much, I guess. But if I'm making compost tea, you can dechlorinate the water. And that just means you let it sit out for a couple of hours and the chlorine dissipates into the air. So that's why when you first turn your hose on and you fill a bucket, it smells very strong. All the chlorine is like dissipating into the air. So don't stick your head down in there. But I mean, it's not like we're not making mustard gas or something. But yeah. Any other questions or things? Go ahead, Terry. Okay.
Wow.
One, did you talk about timing? How often do you do
Oh yeah, so that's why I love adding sort of something granular initially when planting and clearing a bed. And then, there's ideal and then there's reality, right? Right? And so I know, there's ideal and then there's reality, right? And so I know, there's ideal and then there's reality, right? Right? And so I know, there's ideal and then there's reality, right? And so I know, there's ideal and then there's reality, right? And so I know, there's ideal and then there's reality, right? And so I know, there's ideal and then there's reality, right? And so I know, there's ideal and then there's reality, right? And so I know, there's ideal and then there's reality, right? And so I know, there's ideal and then there's reality, right? And so I know, there's ideal and then there's reality, right? And so I know, there's ideal and then there's reality, right? And so I know, there's ideal and then there's reality, right? And so I know, there's ideal and then there's reality, right? And so I know, there's ideal and then there's reality, right? And so I know, there's ideal and then there's reality, right? And so I know, there's ideal and then there's reality, right? And so I know, there's ideal and then there's reality, right? And so I know, there's ideal and then there's reality, right? And so I know, there's ideal and then the if you have something that's already liquid based, and that's probably why the fish emulsion is so attractive, to just add some of that in your watering can every time. But really no more than every 2 weeks, too. And then knowing the fish emulsion is very high nitrogen, so it's not necessarily contributing to really good root growth. And so that's why adding something that has more higher N number is going to get your roots really growing well. And so those roots, there's just a bigger area that it can draw nutrients from. But kind of generally is like, maybe I do the compost tea. Ideally, maybe I do it once a month. In reality, I probably do it every 2 months. Because it's like, when you think about it. But if something's struggling, and then it's like, okay, then I need, something's off. It's struggling, or maybe susceptible to pest or disease because something's off. And that could be nutrients. It could just be the amount of water. It could just be the climate and the seasonality's changed too. And so you kind of have to think about the problem first and then see.
How about the compost that we create, which would be a fertilizer?
Yes, right. Mm-hmm.
You just sprinkle that kind of on the top and take your trowel.
And mix it in.
There and water it down every 2 weeks.
No, not necessarily. I would do it when you're first planting. I would do a lot, and that can be hard because you got everybody wanting that the same few weeks, and so
I always, in my mind, for me, it's the first of the month. Okay, first of the month.
Okay.
I got to do that kind of stuff.
Yeah, and so if you, it can't hurt to add more, and so once a month on.
I don't know what they use, but you and I went to Dream with Color.
Right.
And we bought all these flowers. Mm-hmm. Everybody's noticed all the flowers have appeared, right, since our last class. And they're all blooming there.
Oh, yeah.
At the same time.
And they're like this big.
About this big, and it's beautiful. What do they use?
So they're adding something that's probably like 0-40-40.
Okay.
Like really high concentrated potassium and phosphorus. So the blooms are being forced. It's what's called in the industry forcing those plants. So then when you go to buy them, you can see the color and you're like, oh, it's so pretty. But it's like got a few leaves that's very small. And then they also are making it lots of roots. So that's why when you pull it out, it's like all roots. And so it's the last two numbers. And not a lot of nitrogen, so it's not like spilling out of the little pot.
So once I've taken them out and I put them into the soil, should I put a one that has all of it? I would do
probably one that has all of it. What they're doing is a liquid, and it's very concentrated. It's synthetic too, so it's not sticking around in the soil. They've used it and a boost, and so it's not.
Is the fish fertilizer a good one?
Yeah, so that's
even though it's mostly N.
Well, but that's good for the transplants too, because then it's sort of allowing more leafy green growth, because it doesn't have much. It's only this tall. And also with flowers specifically, or even if it's a tomato or a pepper, and you get a start and it's full of flowers, I pick all those off. I cut all the flowers that have a problem. I know, and it's hard. Because it's pretty, and so
I just can't do it.
So then it can concentrate more on just becoming a bigger green plant, and not supporting so many flowers. And so then over long term, you get a bigger plant which can support more blooms. But it's just not as immediate.
So
think about how they fertilize it in order to market it, in order to sell it. Like it's just like
and so then it's like, because no one wants to buy a flat of something you can't see the flowers and to ensure then you know what color it is. And so that's, remember when we were there, I was like, get those, haven't bloomed yet, get that one.
Get that one.
Yeah.
And those gazanias are doing fantastic
because of that. So then it can concentrate on the leaves. And so just be a bigger plant, has more surface of the plant to photosynthesize and sort of have more growth.
I'm having problems with the ones over there by the red shed. Stock.
Oh, yeah?
And
I had some of those pansies dry up. And so some of it is they're on steroids at the nursery.
So I'm going to put the fish emulsion on and see.
I think, and then you could probably you can do like fish emulsion every 5 days or something too.
Except that it smells like Seattle.
Yeah, this is true. So, I mean, you can do a lot, just sort of wean them off. And that's why a lot of people don't have success at the nursery. You know, they're on steroids and then they go to the real world. And your real world is not, you know, a little harsher on them and stuff. And so then they die. But like Lorna starts here, I'm sure she's used just all organic things. And they have a different look. And so, Alex, you can see if we pulled one out, I bet the roots aren't just like solid roots either. They have roots, but they're not going to be as dense as if it was a nursery, like a greenhouse, commercial, like grown. It's not going to be, because sometimes you pull those out and there's no dirt left. It's just roots because they've been given a 0-40-40 or something that's chemical based. And so
those are my 2 questions.
Yeah.
I don't want to take up everybody else's time.
Oh yeah, sorry.
No, you're good. So how soon do you fertilize if you're planting from seed?
Well, one, I give the granular fertilizer is going to be good 10 days to 2 weeks before it's like available. And so that's why, I'm sure Lorna mentioned this, prepping your beds beforehand, it almost is, it's not quite ready for a couple weeks as those, the soil settles, it's sort of, you know, getting those microbes like activated and that the granular fertilizer sort of breaking down. And so if you do that, then when you plant seeds, you don't need to fertilize at all. And then, you know, you can go on a 2-week cycle, which, as I mentioned, in reality is probably a month, 2 months, and sort of see when things struggle. It's harder to kind of mix. So when you do if you didn't do the granular before you planted seeds, it's a little harder to get in the soil because you want it to be buried and sort of worked in the top few inches. So that's why it's much better before you plant too much, or just, you know, this section I'm planting, I'm going to mix in, you know, kind of that area. And so it's easier to apply like liquid stuff later after stuff is growing.
If like you goofed up, is it bad to plant and do granular at the same time?
No, and that's how most people do it. No, so when I do like transplants, especially, I only add it to the hole that I dug itself, and then I use this stuff is very powdery. It's not even granular. And then I just like throw in a handful, like kind of in the bigger planting hole. But
I put in a worm casting, a little bit of not a lot of granular, like organic, very light fertilizer, and a little bit of Epsom salts together when I put in transplants, just so that the Epsom salts, the magnesium sulfate, helps your plants use the nutrients in the bed.
True. Yes. Yeah.
But with seeds, no, I just direct
Yeah.
the prepared soil and then wait to see what happens.
And so when you throw it in that hole you're digging, you want to make sure it's kind of mixed in some, so that there's not like a pocket that's just like granular fertilizer, and then your roots that hit that may suck it up and burn. So you kind of want a bigger hole than you're necessarily needing to kind of mix in. So as the roots are expanding, they kind of reach that.
I have a question, not to go like too much into seed starting, but can you talk about seed starting medium and mix, and like what you do to make sure that your starts have enough nutrients?
So similar to like starting a bed, is the seed starting mix has stuff in it that will feed over time. And so doing a mix of worm castings, or I'm going to try this insect frass and stuff too, that's more long-term over time. And
so
then
you don't use like a sterile mix?
I do a sterile seed starting mix, and then add in a third of worm castings.
Okay.
And then I also mix in this. This is what I happen to use. I haven't experimented with some of these, but I do like much less than the recommended application rate. I just mix them in, and then as they're bigger, then I do a liquid fertilizer or the compost tea on them. And then if I need to pot up into a bigger pot, then sometimes I'll add a little more of these things, but more diluted. And so actually True Organic sells, it's going to be the same exact stuff but diluted. So it's like, they call it seed starting fertilizer. It's the same stuff, it's just diluted. Yeah, and so then you're paying for more water. And so it's not, but then it's, labeled seed starting stuff. And same with the fish fertilizer is great to get lots of green and like not yellowing, because sometimes you're starting inside, they're not getting the full sun spectrum and can kind of be yellow. But you never do fish fertilizer indoors. Trust me.
For your own sake.
Yes, for your own sake, your family's sake, everybody, like, never do the fish. Yes, and not inside.
The kelp fertilizer has the kelp fertilizer just is a little reminiscent of the seaside. It smells like a little bit like low tide, but nothing like the fish fertilizer.
Right.
And the kelp fertilizer does the same thing. Those had kelp put on them.
Yeah, and so I like kelp a lot, actually. You know. And the other thing I do when I'm potting up, like, into a bigger one is, much like the wool pellets, another product you use is alfalfa pellets. It's very high nitrogen, and so those are pelletized, and you can mix that into your raised bed too. And it's,
you have a big box of that in the store.
yeah, alfalfa pellets, and it's great for adding when you prep your soil too, to throw several handfuls of alfalfa pellets. Very high nitrogen, and so sometimes in the little pot I'll put 2 or 3 alfalfa pellets in the bottom, and then pot it up. And I can tell the ones that have it and versus no.
Really?
Yeah, so they're bigger, stronger plants and grow faster if I do use that. But when they get wet, they stink, and so it's not something. If I was doing it inside, I'd have that. But that's when they are going out. Outside, so they don't smell.
Oh, so like when you pot up
and then it goes outside in the greenhouse, is when I do that. Not the seed starting mix initially.
Let's give a round of applause for